Hi, I'm Francina,
I'm Jackie.
and welcome to the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast.
This podcast is an inquiry into whether rest and love and justice can produce transformative social change. The dominant narrative is this overwork and this glorification of it, especially in the justice space. And here, we're going to question that notion.
Come sit with us as we meet our collective humanity and share stories around rest, love, and justice. It is our hope to create a shift that enables us to recognize that racial justice work is a human issue. It affects us all.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast. We're happy you're here. And we are here for part 2 of our interview with Jeannie Lou. Thank you, Jeannie, for coming back, having
Thanks for
another
having
conversation
me.
with us.
Yes.
And of course, I'm here with my co-host, Francina Call. Thanks, Francina.
Hi.
And yeah, we'd love to just continue the conversation about rest, love, and justice. And our first question is just about how you rest. Like, what rest practices do you have, or even just your journey getting to any sort of practice around rest? We'd love to hear like what's restful for you.
I rest for me these days is allowing myself just kind of the day-to-day accessible like modalities of rest. Meditation is actually a really important one where I give myself a moment of like just quiet and just kind of alone time with my brain, with myself, with my emotions. I'm always trying to my current exercise is trying to be less in my brain, but more in my heart. This is the heart for me has been a very difficult part for me to access. And so I'm trying to practice that kind of a meditation to try to like access that more and try to build a connection between the mind and the heart. So that's a kind of a current practice that I've been doing. And I find it to be deeply rejuvenating. Like after doing it, I feel just kind of more connected to my existence, to myself, and just feel suddenly like rejuvenated to be able to move forward with my day. And I don't get to do it every day, I will have to say, but I do it when I find myself like kind of like alone, be like, okay, this is the time to be able to do it. And I find it to be very, very helpful. Conversation, like tea time with my friends, like when I do gatherings with my friends and we get to sit and we get to like talk stories and like, and share tea and just kind of like unwind in that way is probably like one of my favorite ways of resting. It's not personal. It's not like a solitary rest, but I feel like we are kind of like resting with each other and each other's presence, and that mutual kind of positive, loving energy is very rejuvenating and supporting. And so that is one that I try to do often, and I just love it. I always look forward to it. And just, with my kids, it's just basically being able to trying to remember to focus my attention on my children when they ask for it. And I'm like, I drop everything, I go do the thing. My son is into like painting and raising jumping spiders right now. And so when he's like, Mom, look what, Pumpkin did. So I drop everything, I go over there and I try to be present and like observe the jumping spider with him. And that feels like really, really restful to me, because I get to remember to be right now, and be there with my son. Right. And so those are probably my most kind of like meaningful modalities of rest currently. That's my day to day. That's nothing where I need to like go buy anything expensive or, make an appointment or anything like that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I have loved watching your Instagram stories with the jumping spiders. I was laughing so hard. You're like, I feel like I'm taking care of all these baby spiders.
I am.
Wait, is the spider named Pumpkin?
The pumpkin, yeah, Pumpkin is a spider. She's orange, so he named her Pumpkin, and yeah, it's really sweet.
I gotta start following.
Yes.
Yeah.
The spider stories are the best. I will say too, like, yesterday I've been feeling sort of this disconnect with one of my sons in particular. And yesterday I just said, get a card game and let's play. And
Mm.
we just laughed. And I immediately felt this sense of ease enter my
Mhm.
body.
Mhm.
I was sharing with Jackie earlier that I've been having heartburn. I was just carrying all this like angst and energy. And as we started playing this card game together and just listening to his little laugh, and, he just was so tickled that he was beating me at this game. And it was nothing. But I was like, man, I need to bottle up this type of rest.
Yeah.
And I just thank you for naming that the types of rest are, don't, because most people think like rest, oh, I have to take a nap.
Yeah.
It can be,
Yeah.
but being in community, with somebody or connecting with someone that you love, where you hold each other in your rest is so vital to the rest experience, and um, can actually expand your capacity to rest when you're with other people, especially if they're soul filling people. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you for bringing that forward. Yeah, our next question is, how do you feel love in your body, and what feels loving to you? How do you feel loved?
That's a really good question. How do I feel love? I feel like I can't go into this without getting all kind of metaphysical about it, though. Like it's gonna go kind
We're
of
in it.
weird.
Let's do it.
But
We're
like,
ready.
I did have this kind of meditation experience like about 15 years ago where I really do feel like I experienced the source. And in that moment while I was there, like I felt what real love really actually felt like, what real kind of like universal, like this kind of like almost like cliche, like, oh, like love is all you need, we're all connected. And like, and I really did experience that. And that kind of like unconditional, like unattached, but yet like boundless love and energy that is attached to that. And like, and it's just, and it's from not from any kind of part of, it doesn't come from like who I am, you know what I mean, or like, or any part of like whether I'm good or bad or anything, just being, I am loved. And so I look back when I'm feeling kind of depleted, I look back at that time, at that moment when I had that experience, and I try to embody that feeling again and like through my whole body. And it reminds me of what this kind of like, I don't even know what to call it, but it's this kind of like universal, like love that is accessible to us at any moment. Like you don't even need to have somebody with you. You can tap into that. And so I tap into it. I feel it, but I also feel it when I'm reminded of it when I see like something like my children's face, like kind of like the gifts that life give us. I'm reminded of it when I see like, a beautiful bird on a tree, like literally simple things, that like how lucky and how amazing this life is that we get to experience and see this. And that the enjoyment of that, the appreciation of that is like just like the purest love for me. And that's how I actually like experience love.
And if you were going to put a description, like, where do you feel this feeling? And does it feel warm? Does it feel tingly? Does it feel like butterflies? Does it ripple up and down your body? Does it concentrate in the heart center? Like, if you were going to describe it, and well, I guess you kind of explained like what experiences bring it on. And the reason I ask is because we really want our listeners to be able to recognize that love can show up in so many different ways in our
Hmm.
bodies. And if we're accessing what love feels like in our bodies, we'll know when we're in the presence of love.
Absolutely. For me, it's like this kind of warm, glowy, like feeling that starts kind of in the chest. Like, it's like deep
Mhm.
in the center. And it feels kind of like almost like a pressure. It's almost like something's like pushing against my rib cage a little bit, but it's also warm. And when I allow myself to focus on it and think about, oh, like I'm feeling something, it actually just kind of like dissipates through the whole kind of system. And it is a little bit tingly. Give me a little bit of a chill. And
Mm,
that's what I feel. And it's waves, definitely like rippling waves that come through as well.
yeah. Thank you.
And it's contagious. I can feel it through your experience.
Yes,
Like,
it's
I
absolutely
mean,
contagious. Yes.
it's I mean, just as you were describing tapping into the meditative state once you were able to be connected to source, then I started feeling like joy in my body and
Yes.
like I couldn't stop smiling. I mean, it's just
Yes.
amazing how that can be transmitted. That
Absolutely.
like
Absolutely.
as you described it, that like purity of love without conditions. So I could feel that too. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I'm good. I
Yeah.
hope your listeners can feel it too then hearing me speak because I just wish I hope like everybody can feel it and experience that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we have our final question for part two, which is how are you living out justice? And that can be anything you want to share about your experience, and we're just here for whatever feels like it's coming up.
Absolutely. I think I touched upon it a little bit, as a kid, how I kind of responded to right and wrong. And I think for my day to day, what I remind myself is that, like, that sense of, I think, especially with everything going on, we always feel like we're not doing enough, and we're not in the front lines, and we're not doing these grand, huge acts of heroism, I guess, to help bring about justice, because a lot of us just aren't in that space to be able to do it. But what we do all have is a sense of justice. I don't care
Mhm.
who that person is. And even if they're the most, maybe even an evil person, I believe that that person actually has deep down a sense of justice. And they maybe are either like ignoring it or casting it aside. So I believe the work that we all can do and need to do is look within ourselves and tap into what that sense of justice is within us. And I know that it's true for everybody, that we all have it, and it's based on like universal justice. This is not talking about like American law or global politics or anything like that. I'm talking about like real, like human justice that I think is innate in us, that I don't think we need to like read a book about, and we can tap into that, and we can just be honest with ourselves and act upon that. Like, don't deny it, don't like excuse it away. And when we see moments in our days where we sense that our sense of justice is being threatened, or we witness something that is unjust, that we do have the ability to either say something, to do something, and we can voice ourselves, because ultimately, even just voicing ourselves and showing kind of collective agreement on something is very powerful, right? And to not just kind of like cower and step back and be like, and I understand there is a safety issue for a lot of people, and there are like actual ramifications for people for stepping up and voicing themselves. And maybe that isn't a right time for some people, but I do think that there are still a lot of opportunities to still be honest with yourself. Like, you want to live with yourself ultimately in this life, right? You want to go to bed feeling that you did the right thing, and that you stand for the right things, and that you felt like you did your best ultimately when this life is
Yeah.
over. And I think justice is a major part of that.
Yeah. And I just also feel like it's important to name, just based on the arc of our conversation when we first began, myself being an immigrant, how hard it is when you're in a country feeling like you're other, to feel like
Yeah.
you can stand up,
Yeah.
because sometimes the ramifications on your business,
Oh, yeah.
the blacklisting, like all of that, and suddenly everything that you worked for can suddenly go away in a
Yep.
moment's notice. And so I just want to name that, especially if we have immigrants that are listening to the story, and non-immigrants, so that there is an awareness, a raised awareness of the grace that is required, I think, in this human experience for us as we become better community members, that justice is also continuing to support businesses that stand for
Absolutely.
something from their country of origin. I was actually watching and this is an important conversation for me, and I think we're actually going to do a vibe out on this, Jackie. But it was a video of a guy who is an actor. I think he's a Chinese actor, and he's doing like a Shark Tank thing. And there's this white guy who came onto the show, and he was selling bubble tea, and
Oh,
it
I
was like in
saw
this
that. Yeah.
can.
Yeah,
Have you seen
it's
that?
Simi Liu. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and
Mhm.
he's like, he stops, he goes, "There's nothing on this can about, like, the origins of bubble tea." And, like, I come from people who made it, and so for that reason, I can't, because this is appropriation. And I've talked to Jackie about this so many times, and that's part of why I wanna do a vibe out on this. English breakfast, for me, is an appropriation tea,
Mm.
and as a small business, oh my gosh, the first time I've ever said this. As a small business, it is in my spirit to put it on my website because I sell it. Because the first mentor I ever had said, everybody wants an English breakfast. You have to have an English breakfast. But I've always wanted to write a disclaimer underneath it that English
Mm.
breakfast is a collection of teas from the colonies of the British. They don't grow any tea on that
Mm.
island.
That's
And
true.
yet it is prolifically known as like the standard of tea around the world. And I know that part of my work as a tea business owner is to bring the story of the origin of tea. And yet I've not had the balls myself to put it on my website because I'm afraid of the ramifications, right? When people say, "Oh, what's your favorite tea?" And, most people are like, "Oh, I love an English breakfast." I love it. I'm like, they don't grow tea on that. They don't grow tea in England. It's not true. And it's culturally accepted everywhere that English breakfast is a thing and people just accept it. And I'm afraid, being an immigrant, being so small, that people will stop buying my tea because I'm making some riffraff about, this English breakfast tea. Um, Sorry. I just felt like I had to bring that forward.
I appreciate that,
No.
and we've talked about this too, like Belgian chocolate. Cacao is not from
Oh
the
my God.
European
Yeah.
continent,
Yeah.
and who is making money? Of course, there's collaborations that happen, but like I think just the questioning of like who's making money off of this product that has no cultural connection to the person. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
Francine, I really appreciate you bringing that through, and obviously with the connection with tea too.
Yeah, no, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. I was just reading about one of the small business owners that is in Seattle. She sells her products in the local farmers market, and she's a second generation um, plum jam product. Like she sells plum jams that are produced in Washington, like they produce it, and from plums that are harvested in Washington. And she has always been like a Palestinian supporter, and she's always had a sign up on her stand, and a customer, I guess, over the weekend saw it and like had to make a comment about it, and then ultimately threatened, to tell her, their community to not support her, because of that sign,
Oh,
and so to basically like try to, you know, quash her business, right? Like in retaliation for her own, like, beliefs, right? It happens quite often, and it's really unsettling.
yeah, really unsettling. Yeah. And so I think, it's important for us to be in these kind of conversations, right? Having been products of either being first generation immigrant or, both of us are being immigrants, recognizing that there is, so much power and potency to speaking up for justice causes, but also recognizing the real fear that is behind speaking up for justice. And yeah, I just want to thank you for, being so bold and courageous to open a tea shop in Seattle. I think it's important for the world to see a beautiful, strong, Asian woman who is, a child of immigrants, herself is an immigrant to this country, and you have built this amazing business that supports your local community, and changes the narrative. Representation is so important. You know, Business owners can look so many different ways and come from so many different cultural backgrounds. And that you're bringing this forward in your community is a beautiful thing to witness. And I am grateful for it.
Thank you so much, Francina. It means a lot to hear you say that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, I believe that's a wrap on this episode of the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast. Thank you, Jeannie, for being a part of this two-part interview. I'm so grateful for your friendship. I'm so grateful for just the amazing human that you are and the work that you do in the world. So
Thank
that's
you.
all,
Same,
folks.
same. Feel so
Yeah.
blessed to be your friend. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. Peace and love.
And that is our show for this week. This episode was produced by The City Music. As for me, I'm Jackie Gao, and thanks to my co-host, Francina and
May you move through this week embodying rest, love, and justice in ways that are meaningful to you and your community. Thanks for joining us today. Peace and love.